The deafening roar of artillery shells exploded around the makeshift kitchen, sending shards of earth and smoke into the murky dusk. Amid the chaos of one of history's fiercest battles, a lone figure moved with urgency and fear. Myra, a young wartime cook, was stirring a massive, burnt pot over an open fire, her hands trembling not just from the cold, but from the weight of what was at stake. Around her, soldiers clung to the fragile hope that the meager meal she prepared could be their lifeline. How had she survived the relentless siege, and why was her story almost erased by time? It was the bitter winter of 1943. The mud clung to boots like glue, the acrid scent of diesel smoke hung heavy in the air, and a piercing silence often fell between bursts of gunfire. The front line was a frozen wasteland of shattered trenches and broken bodies. In the heart of this desolation, Myra's small tent, barely shielded from the cold wind, became a battlefield of a different kind. Her realm was not the firing line, but the wartime kitchen, a grim place where survival depended on more than just weapons. Myra was assigned as a cook to the beleaguered unit encamped at the edge of the conflict zone. Few knew her name beyond the faint smiles of soldiers who swallowed her food as though it were sacred. The declassified files reveal an overwhelming reality. Starvation and despair threatened to break the men before the enemy's bullets could. Supplies were dwindling, ration shortages worsened with every passing day. Fresh ingredients were a distant memory, replaced by the sunken hope stirred into every pot. On a freezing morning, the inciting incident struck like a thunderclap. Enemy forces launched a surprise assault, and the unit was forced to evacuate their positions under fire. In the turmoil, the supply carts were lost, leaving behind only the scraps and preserved remnants Myra had managed to salvage. The men's strength drained rapidly, morale plummeted alongside their bodies. It was then Myra made a decision that would alter the course of the siege and cement her legacy in the shadows. She scoured the battlefield for anything edible, dandelions, scorched roots, even the bitter bark of trees. With desperate ingenuity, she combined these with rationed flour and stale canned goods to create improvised meals. Eyewitness accounts speak of how Myra's secret recipes carried an unexpected power, not merely to fill stomachs, but to ignite the will to fight. There was one ingredient she guarded more fiercely than any weapon: a handful of dried herbs smuggled from home, said to conceal nutrients that no official ration could provide. Each day was a struggle. Fear sharpened her senses, adrenaline pumping through her veins as shellfire cracked overhead. Her hands blistered over the rough wooden spoons, the huge pot simmered under a smoky fire, casting eerie shadows. Soldiers frequently emerged from the trenches, gaunt and hollow-eyed, drawn by the scent of Myra's food, glimpsing the fragile comfort amid the brutal reality. Yet the dangers were unrelenting. Snipers targeted the supply lines, and the tent was once nearly razed by a stray incendiary. The breaking point came when enemy forces mounted their fiercest assault, aiming to crush the defenders completely. Myra's kitchen was nearly overrun. The fire was almost extinguished. In those frantic moments, with no help and the enemy closing in, she clung to her pot, stirring the thick stew with shaking hands. The secret ingredient, a small pinch of powdered garlic and an unyielding spirit, was all that stood between survival and surrender. Rapid gunfire echoed, breaths came in ragged gasps, and time seemed to fracture into endless seconds. Then, a twist. Post-war declassified documents reveal the lies that tried to diminish Myra's contribution. Military reports focused on battalion maneuvers and heroics of commanders, ignoring the unspoken truth. Without the nourishment and hope Myra's food provided, countless soldiers would have succumbed to hunger and despair before the enemy's bullets reached them. They censored her identity, buried her story to preserve the sanitized image of war. But testimonies speak otherwise. Soldiers whispered her name in their final moments, credited her meals with keeping their bodies and souls intact. Today, the harsh lessons are clear. The battlefield is not won by guns alone, but by the invisible threads of survival woven by those who fight hunger and hopelessness. Myra's tale is a solemn reminder. War's terrors are as much about endurance as about violence. Nourishment can be a weapon as sharp as any blade, and the sacrifices behind every meager meal are stories of unseen valor. Her legacy lingers in the burnt pots and faded ration books, in the silent gratitude of those who lived because she dared to defy despair. In the end, the terrifying truth about Myra, the wartime cook, is not just her terrifying ordeal, but the courageous spirit that no enemy coup.